back to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome. If you're new, your girl done went to Paris and came back. So I went to Paris about 2 weeks ago at this point, and I recently just uploaded the Paris vlog. So if you haven't checked it out yet, make sure to go check it out on my channel. Y'all know when I come back from a trip, I love to do a travel guide video, just giving you guys the ins and out of what it's like or things to know before actually traveling to that place, just so you guys can be ready when you get there. So today is no different. I will be doing a travel guide on Paris and all the things you should know, even the smallest little details. Like my other travel guide videos, this video will be split into different chapters with the timestamps listed below in the description box. I always say feel free to skip around and take what you need, although I always recommend watching the whole video at least for the first time, just so you guys can get a general overview of what to expect. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on your post notification bell, especially if you love travel content. I do a lot of travel content here and there. Let's get into the video though. So first, we're gonna start off with the checklist that you need when going to Paris. So these are like some important things to think about outside of just like your clothes and knickknacks that you want to carry. The first item is your passport, and you're probably like, duh, passport. But no, you want to make sure that you go get your passport right now and check to make sure that your passport is not expiring anywhere close to the time that you're going or coming back from Paris. That is very, very important, as you don't want to be at the airport stranded, okay? And also, if you live in the US, you know how hard it is right now to get a passport appointment or just like see someone to get your passport renewed. So you want to make sure you're giving yourself ample time to do that ahead of time if your passport is expiring anywhere around when you're going or coming back. For example, mine was expiring like a week after I came back, so I made sure to take care of that months ahead so that I would be good when I'm on the trip. The next item is a travel adapter, and this one a lot of people may not think about right off bat, but US and France has different ports when it comes to charging. So you want to make sure that you're able to get a travel adapter here so you can use it in France to charge any of your items. I did buy one off of Amazon. I'll put the link below in the description box, so if you guys want to buy the same one I did, you can. It does have like the ports as well as like a USB and a USB-C on the same travel adapter, so I thought it was really cool. So the next thing to do is convert your money to euros before actually traveling there. Speaking from a US perspective, converting your dollars into euros, please do this before you get to the airport. I did it at the airport, and I feel like they charge me a lot of money for the currency exchange. So try to do it ahead of time before you actually get to the airport so you don't have the same luck that I did. The next thing you want to think about is your debit and credit cards. Two things about them. One, you want to make sure for your credit cards to check maybe if they don't have travel fees. That's a card you probably really want to use more times than often. And also for some of like your debit cards or credit cards, you also want to check if that bank requires that you notify them that you're going to be out the country. Because sometimes if you're in another country and you don't alert them, they can shut down your card for fraud or just lock your card, and you don't want to be in an instance where they lock your card. So that's something to check before going on the trip as well. So the next thing is to have a portable charger. This is more important if you're going to be having long days outside. I feel like especially as a tourist, you spend a lot of time just doing different activities, going from place to place. So sometimes you may not have a sit-down place to actually charge your stuff. And on top of that, again, with the travel adapter, there's different adaptations to chargers in the US to France. Traveling with a portable charger makes things a little bit easier for you, especially when you're outside. And you also just don't want your phone to die in a country that you may have never been to. And then the last two things I would say is a light jacket. I went in the summertime, so I'm speaking from the weather of the end of June to about July. It was hot, but it wasn't too hot. But it had like a little breeze enough where you may need a light jacket sometimes. For me, I get cold kind of fast, so that's why I would also say bring a light jacket. And then the last thing I would say is to bring a small umbrella. I don't know what it's like in the fall or winter, but if you're going in the summer, make sure to bring an umbrella for just in case purposes. The next chapter we're going to touch on is the language barrier side as well as basic French terms. So if you're going to France and you do not know French, one thing I would recommend is downloading Google Translate. On Google Translate, you can actually download the French dictionary to use offline. So when you're outside, you can actually type in things that you may want to say if you want someone to understand you, and it will translate into France. And if they're comfortable, they can do the same thing back. For example, me and Heeman on the trip had went to a party and we had to take a taxi back home, and the taxi driver was talking to us. We did not understand everything. I know a little bit of French, but not a lot, so we used the app and it worked out for us. So please, if you're going, download Google Translate. It's really helpful. So I think it's really important to know a few basic French terms when going to Paris, or just France in general, that they use constantly. So the first four that you'll be able to say most times, one is bonjour. I think everyone kind of knows this one by now, but a lot of people use it as a hello, or they'll use it as a good morning. That's something that you can say, bonjour, bonjour, you know, talking to people when you get in a taxi, when you go in a store, you know, hello. The next term is s'il vous plaît, which essentially means please. So if you're asking for something, s'il vous plaît at the end of your sentence just means please. The next term that you'll use constantly is merci, which means thank you. And the last term is bonsoir, which means good evening. So if it's nighttime, you can say bonsoir instead of bonjour. I hope that you're able to learn other French terms outside of this video, but those first four are great for to start with. Now let's talk about arrivals and departures. So when we first arrived in Paris and got off the plane, we were transferred into this bus to kind of take us into the customs section. Customs line was really long. I think it's just when you're going from the US to Paris, there's one, so many people on that plane, and two, there's just a lot of people going to Paris in general, especially in the summertime. Everyone's trying to have a Euro summer. So the customs line took about like 20 minutes just to get through. Once you get through the line, there is this like machine. You're gonna go through, put your passport in, and then you also get your passport stamped. And then once you're finished with that, you just go pick up your bag and you're ready to go. In terms of departure, security actually moved pretty fast, like surprised, but again, they did move pretty fast, taking people through the line. And then you also do go back through the machine again. So through the machine, you'll put your passport in. I think it's just their way to verify, and you also do get a passport control stamp to leave. One thing I would say is the machine for the last few people who had to get on the plane or like come in the line from our group, they actually got stuck at that machine because it went down in terms of like it wasn't working for a while. So I would say just give yourself ample time, because you want to make sure that you don't have any hiccups with security or that specific passport machine. Okay, so now let's talk about phone service. So two things: you can either get a international plan if you have one, or two, if you do have an unlocked phone, I would recommend getting an SD card from France and utilizing that. I think if you're going to France, it is important to have service. A lot of people talk about places having Wi-Fi, and a lot of places do have Wi-Fi, but most times you need a code to get into the Wi-Fi. Like here in the US, you can go to a restaurant that has Wi-Fi and automatically connect. In France or in Paris, it wasn't really like that. Typically, if a cafe has Wi-Fi, you'll have to go in and put in a password. And a lot of times the password wasn't as visible, so you probably have to ask or something like that. But that is just something to take note of. And lastly, on TikTok, I did see something about an eSIM card. I don't know too much about it, but the girl was saying that she utilized that for traveling instead of having an international plan or changing her SIM card. So that's something that you can look into and research if you're interested. So next we have transportation. Y'all, Uber works in Paris. I don't know if I'm really shocked, but like, it definitely was like a little revelation, like, oh my god, Uber works here. So if you are in Paris, please utilize Uber sometimes as opposed to taxis. I say this because typically with Uber, you have a set price. You know how much that ride is gonna cost from point A to point B. There are taxis, but typically taxis use the running meter system. So if you're going from point A to point B, you may not know how much it's gonna cost by the time you get there. And when I tell you, when me and Heeman was coming back from that party in that taxi cab, the way that meter was running so fast and jumping from number to number, we were like, what the, because we had euros, but the way it was running, we didn't think that we were gonna have enough euros to pay for that car. So definitely utilize Ubers when you can, more so than the taxis that are actually there. But outside of Ubers, I would say utilize the train system when you can. Their train system is actually really great. I'm a New Yorker. I use MTA all the time. There are always problems with MTA. Utilizing the train system in Paris, like, it was so different. And I actually loved taking the train sometimes because, one, it was really fast. It's kind of easy to utilize once you kind of get the hang of it. The stops are on the train like how typical trains have the stops. The only thing is knowing where to get off. But you have Google Maps, you can put in the address, it'll give you how to get there. So definitely utilize the trains when you can. And utilizing the train is way cheaper than Uber, of course. A single ticket was €2.10. So utilize the trains when you can as opposed to using Uber. And depending on how close you're staying to things, Paris might even be a little bit more walkable for you. So there may be cafes or tourist attractions that are closer to your hotel or your Airbnb. For us, it wasn't, so we did have to rely on things like the train and Uber. But if you do pick a place that is closer to some of those tourist attractions, it might cost you a little bit more money, but you might be saving in the long run off of Ubers or the train. When I do travel guide videos, I love to touch on group size. Is it great for 2 people, 3 people, or is it great for large groups? Specifically with Paris, I feel like, you know, it's great for a vacation, it's great for a friendcation, 2-3 people. But it also is great if you want to take a large group. We went for Heman's mom's birthday and we had a group of like 19 people and it worked out. There are buses you can rent, or there are buses that you can pay for that can take you on group tours. Like, it just works out that you can do large group stuff when in Paris. For one, it's a city, so it makes sense. But that's just something to think about if you want to do a vacation or if you ever want to do a large group. Paris definitely accommodates both. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about where to stay. So this is my opinion. You don't have to listen to it, but you can take it into consideration. So we actually stood at the Novotel La Défense. So this hotel is about 20 minutes away from, like, let's say the Eiffel Tower area by train. And I feel like Eiffel Tower is more like central Paris. So for us, some things were, I wouldn't say out of the way, but we definitely, like I said a little bit earlier in this video, had to rely on Ubers or the train. Like, we couldn't just walk to really go somewhere unless it was like the mall. We had a mall close to us. But like in the area where we were, there wasn't a lot of things around to do. So I would recommend staying a little bit closer to the city if you do have a little bit more money to splurge on where you want to stay. Utilize that extra money to put into your hotel so that you wouldn't have to spend it more on Ubers and trains. Novotel La Défense was cool though. Like, we have made friends with the front desk lady. She was super nice, super sweet, and really helpful with us, like, being there as a full group in the hotel. But the hotel is really quiet. I feel like we were the only, like, quote unquote loud people in the hotel, but the front desk people loved it. They said we brought like life to the hotel. While there, I stayed in a room by myself, so I had a full-size bed, I had, you know, the bathroom, and I had like a little view of Paris. However, there were a couple people that were actually sharing rooms while we were there at that hotel who didn't really like their rooms, so I don't know if I can really recommend it on that part. I definitely recommend staying at a hotel that is a little bit closer to central Paris. That way it's just a little bit easier to get around. Okay, so now let's touch on things to do. I actually have my phone here because it is a lot of things that I kind of have listed that I don't want to forget. So typically a lot of the stuff that I'll be touching on is some of the touristy stuff, but I have like a few that I want to touch on that can be done as well. So the number one thing that I feel like you have to do while in Paris is visit the Chateau du Versailles. So I would say that was probably the most fun day for me personally because the palace was so beautiful and rich of history. We got to kind of explore the different rooms and we didn't even get to see the whole entire thing, but for what we saw, it was beautiful. And then on top of that, There is also the Garden of Versailles, and I feel like you can spend the whole entire day there because the garden part of Versailles is so huge, so huge. There's so much to explore, and we only had an hour left. Like our tourist, our tour guide actually only gave us an hour to explore because we had to get back to Paris. So I recommend, if you can, like spend your time, or like spend like a good half a day just in the Versailles area, because it's so nice. The Garden of Versailles is so much to explore. If you're into taking pictures, it's a beautiful place to get a lot of pictures taken. So definitely #1 on my list of something you need to do while in Paris. #2 is to visit the Eiffel Tower. This is what you're gonna do anyway while there, so I don't even need to say it. But make sure you're visiting the Eiffel Tower in the daytime as well as nighttime. The nighttime is way more beautiful than the daytime, of course, but I feel like you kind of get two different perspectives when seeing it in the daytime and nighttime. One thing about the nighttime to know is that the Eiffel Tower lights up on the hour for 50, I think it's 55 or 15. It's either 5 or 15 minutes at the hour. I think it's 5 actually. So I think it starts at 10, or it started at 10 while we were there. So I think it was 10, 11, 12, and 1. Don't quote me on it, but that's when it like lights up and it like sparkles. And at 1 is when it sparkled, but the lights went off. So it was really, really pretty. But definitely make sure you keep that in mind. Also with the Eiffel Tower, in front of the Eiffel Tower, there are normally these guys that actually take pictures of you. So if you're going with your friends, or you're going with your man or your girlfriend, whoever, you can actually get pictures in front of the Eiffel Tower, like professionally done pictures. I did it. I'll insert one here. It came out so nice. They actually also have like these red heart balloons that they give people. So I think it's like a cute thing if you want to have a memory of seeing Eiffel Tower at night. They all have different prices for the pictures, but one thing to do is to really negotiate, because they will really try to finesse you out of some money when they know you are a tourist. So that is something to keep in mind. Also, in terms of the Eiffel Tower, there are a lot of like men around there who sell like the Eiffel Tower souvenirs. There are a lot of souvenir places in that section. So make sure that if you want to get souvenirs, that's probably where you can actually get some of them. But one thing about the men, they will keep coming up to you, asking you if you want this souvenir, if you want this souvenir. It can be so much at times, like you have to just keep saying no thank you. Sometimes you'll say no thank you and they still come up to you. So that's something to keep in mind when going over to the Eiffel Tower area. The next thing on the list is museums. I feel like Paris has so many museums. So that's something that you can take. One of the most famous is the Louvre. So you want to make sure that you're also checking that out. The area around the Louvre is so beautiful. So the day we went to the Louvre, we took pictures by the Louvre. I also realized there's a restaurant where you can eat by the Louvre. So if you want to eat by the Louvre, that's something that you can also do some research on as well. And kind of just look at the surrounding areas too. There's a Haagen-Dazs restaurant close to the Louvre. And when I say restaurant for Haagen-Dazs, I mean restaurant. Like a restaurant with actual waiters, a menu. It's crazy. But it was so much fun going there and like trying out the ice cream. The next thing I would say to do is a boat ride. There's so many boat rides on the Seine River, but the one that we personally did was like a dinner cruise on the Seine River. So it was like you kind of dressed up really nice. They had like a singer on the boat. You get a 3-course meal, appetizer, entree, and dessert. And they kind of just sing. You can take pictures on the back of the boat. They have a lady who comes around and take pictures and prints it out, and you can pay for it. But there are also other boat rides. I'm not really sure what they are because we didn't do those. But there are a lot of boat tours that you can do when on the Seine River. Next is Disneyland. Oh my God. I didn't get to go to Disneyland, but I feel like some people do not know that there's Disneyland in Paris. So I didn't get to go because one, there were like riots happening in Paris, which was gonna make the ride longer to get there. So I didn't get to go. But I hope that if you're going to Paris one day, you can go to Disneyland. I think that's one of the few reasons I would actually go back to go to Disneyland. But yeah, Disneyland is in Paris, and I think it's a little bit cheaper than what it would be here in the US if you book it earlier. If you know you're going like 3 months out, plan when you know that day is that you want to go to Disneyland and just book the ticket, because the closer to the date that you buy it, the more expensive it's gonna be. The next thing to do is shopping, of course. If you have a little bit more money to splurge, definitely go shopping. There are so many different shops to go to. They also have a mall, like a huge mall, Galeries Lafayette, but it's one of those like more high-end stores. More high-end malls. So if you're going there, make sure that, you know, if you're gonna go check it out and walk around, you can do that. But if you're going to buy something, just be mindful that a lot of stuff in that mall, very pricey. If you are someone who loves perfume, I recommend looking for some of those places you can actually make your own perfume. I actually don't remember which one I was looking at. I might drop the link in the description box, but you had to like reserve it ahead of time, and I didn't know, or I would have done it. But if you are in France and you love perfume, please do something with perfume, because they do have like a lot of stuff set up for people to, you know, make their own perfume or like buy perfume. I was able to buy perfume when I left Paris, but I really wish I did have the opportunity to make my own fragrance there. I feel like it just would have been a dope experience. Next on the list is Kith Cafe. So there's a Kith store in Paris that has a cafe attached to it. So it's like in the color Tiffany blue. It's so pretty. The food was so good. So they are on the list to try if you need something to go eat. It's really close to the Galeries Lafayette Mall. So if you want to eat and then go to the mall, or go to the mall and then eat, I recommend both. As we are also talking a little bit about cafes. Cafes are a big thing in Paris. So there are a lot of different cafes that you can try. I have 3 of them that are actually really popular. So Carrette is actually a like popular place for hot chocolate. Like a lot of people go there just to try the hot chocolate I've seen. But a lot of people go there also, I realized, because they just love their food. Personally, when we went, I only was going to get the hot chocolate and crepes. So I didn't get to try any of their food, so I don't really know what it tastes like. But I recommend going if that's something that you're interested in. There's also a cafe called Cafe des Fleurs. If you love Gossip Girl, it was actually mentioned in Gossip Girl. I only seen this once I came back from Paris. So if you're a Gossip Girl fan, I recommend going to Cafe des Fleurs. And then there's also a popular cafe called La Favorita. And typically on the outside, I feel like it's popular for the aesthetic that it has on the outside. A lot of people take pictures on the outside because, at least for the summertime, they have like lots of like flowers and different things around the sign. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely recommend, you know, checking it out. There's also another thing that I saw on TikTok once I came back. I saw this La Grande Mousse de Paris, and it's like kind of like a garden of sorts. It was really pretty. I'm gonna insert the TikTok right here of what I saw, but it was so nice and I really wish I got to go. So I'm recommending it if gardens are your thing of what you want to explore in Paris. The last thing that I have for things to do is actually a day trip from Paris to London. So if you're actually staying in Paris for the duration of your trip, like you're not doing a Euro summer where you're traveling from point to point, I recommend possibly doing a London day trip. So we had got recommended to go to London for a day by Eurostar. So Eurostar is like a train that you can take to go. But I wish we knew ahead of time, because we tried to book the night before and it was costing like 500 euros. And that's basically like over $500 in US money. So it just wouldn't have made sense, because that's like an airplane ticket that we can actually go to come back to London and actually experience it for more than a day. So if you are thinking about that, I recommend looking ahead of time and booking your ticket on Eurostar, so you can get a better deal for that day trip. Other than the list that I just listed, I recommend looking on TikTok for more things to do in Paris. or talk to the locals that are there, talk to your hotel person, your Airbnb person for things that they recommend, so you also can get a local point of view as well. Next is clubs. So if you want to turn up, have fun, Paris is the place to do that. Paris does not sleep, okay? Let me tell y'all right now, there are parties that end at 5 and 6 in the morning. There is ample time on especially like Fridays and Saturdays to go out and get lit and have fun in Paris. There is a club called La Pachamama. We had got there too late, so we weren't able to get in, but I recommend this club. It looks fun from the outside looking in. They have like 4 floors in the like place and people just partying literally all night long. I highly recommend that you get there at least like 1, 2, because when we got there, the only reason why we didn't get in, we got there like 3:51 and they stopped letting people into the party. Like they don't close the party down, but they stopped letting people into the party around what is supposed to be 4, but they stopped early. So recommend getting there at least by 2 o'clock so you have ample time to party. And around there typically they do have taxis like I touched on before, but if you have service, I recommend calling an Uber. Sometimes it can be a little like hard to get an Uber because there's so many other people also probably getting Ubers as well. I recommend leaving the party before it's officially done. Or not, it's gonna be even harder to get back where you're supposed to be if you did have to take an Uber or a taxi. The next club I want to touch on is Fresh Touch. So this club, I'm not recommending it, I'm just telling you so you know. If you are a person of color watching this video, one of the things that I touched on in my vlog was the fact that we wanted to go to this club, which is called Fresh Touch, and they were having a party on Sunday. And since we didn't get to go out Friday or Saturday, we were like, okay, let's go to this party, you know, enjoy our last like full night in Paris. And we ended up going and experiencing racism. We didn't even get to go in the club. There was 2 guys there. It was like a guy that was actually like kind of telling people that they can come in or not come in, but the person who was actually advising him on who can come in or not, once we got in front of the line, he asked us like, were we American? He asked, like, he started speaking French. He realized we couldn't speak French. He asked, are we American? And I think he also just looked at us and was like, there. So we ended up not getting in the club, but we stood around the club by the entrance just to kind of see what it was like. And we started realizing that people who looked like us was not getting in the club and our white counterparts were getting in the club. There was one black girl who got in the club, but I think it was because she spoke French, because the rest of the black people, they were not getting in the club. And we stood there so long that the person who had told us that we couldn't come in, the one who was advised to tell us that we couldn't come in, he felt so bad because it was a black bouncer, and he was just like, I think it may be the color of your skin because you guys are in dress code. So I don't know, that's a club I wouldn't recommend off bat, just because you don't know if you get there what's gonna happen. And it would just suck because we wasted money going to the club. Like if we had known before, we wouldn't have gone there. So take that into consideration with, you know, your club antics. Also, one thing to note is certain clubs in Paris have dress codes. Like I keep seeing on TikTok, there's some clubs that like the girls wear heels or like they wear sandals. So I would just say look really nice. Like I know a lot of people in the US, when they go to parties, at least for New York specifically, like some people wear jeans or, you know, whatever. But I would say look nice, especially for the males, to like look really nice when you're going to the club, just to kind of avoid being turned away from the door. Other than that, those are the only, like, La Pachamama is really the only club recommendation that I have. I didn't do my due diligence in looking up clubs before Paris, so I recommend you doing yours. Use TikTok, you search the internet for fun places to party in Paris and have a ball while there. So next is food. Like I touched on a little bit earlier, there are so many different cafes, but one thing I really want to point out with food is there's also Uber Eats. Like I was so amazed. Like I know we touched on the fact that there's Uber, but there's also Uber Eats. So if you're in your hotel and like you just want like quick eats, you can order on Uber Eats as well. Please note that eating out in Paris is expensive. Like, it is actually very expensive to eat out in Paris. Eating out in New York, like, I think is expensive, but really not compared to Paris. So for example, first night I had a drink called Sex on the Beach. Here in America it's probably like $14. In Paris it was at one of the restaurants. It really depends on where you eat, but at one of the restaurants the drink was 23 euros, which is technically like $24 in US money. So that was crazy to experience. There was also another time I got a lemonade and it was 8 euros. That's basically like almost $9 US. Like at a restaurant in New York, that would be like $4. So take account that eating out in Paris can be expensive. Make sure that you have euros on deck, or if your card doesn't work, that you can just pay them. Also be aware that they give you your serving size for food. I feel like America overfeeds people a lot. Like, you'll go to a restaurant, you'll get a plate and they'll fill the whole plate. In Paris, not like that. They literally give you your serving size. If this is how much rice you're really supposed to eat, this is how much rice will be on the plate. So that is something to take into consideration. Also, a lot of the restaurants that we went to, they didn't really season their food the way they're supposed to, at least not the way we do it in cultural homes. So also take that into consideration. In terms of being black in Paris, in terms of food, there is a area in Paris, I think it's called Strasbourg. I think it's called Strasbourg. But in that area, maybe there's a little bit more like food options because they have a lot of Africans in Paris. So there is like a section where they have their own restaurants and they cook food like us, which I've heard. I didn't get to go, so I can't like really speak on that, but that's something that I've heard on. So next I just want to talk about being black in Paris. So going around like different areas, I don't feel like we were bothered that much. Like, no one bothered us, no one really treated us crazy. The only story I really have is the Paris club section. Not to say that there isn't racism there, because you know what I don't experience doesn't mean that someone else won't experience. Other than the club, everything went smoothly. And also there are things like, for example, hair stores that you're not just gonna be able to go and find usual stuff that we have in like a regular store. So again, recommend checking out, I think it's Strasbourg. Correct me if you're from Paris and I'm wrong, but I think it's Strasbourg for the like black area of like, they have stores like this. Someone from our group went and they said it's kind of like 125th in Harlem. So recommend checking that out as well. Okay, so these are my last and final words when talking about Paris. I just want to touch on culture. So one is tipping. People in Paris do not like when you tip. It was such a culture shock experiencing that, because being in New York or just the US in general, everywhere you go when it's like service helping, they looking for a tip, or if you don't give them a tip, they're gonna talk about you crazy. So going to Paris and like trying to give a tip on food, or like at restaurants, tip isn't even included in the bill. Like, they just want you to pay, if it's 130 euros, they just want you to pay 130. So it's just kind of like, it was kind of a shock for me going there and experiencing that. Two, I would just say be respectful of people's culture. One, the language, the food, kind of immerse yourself. Things are gonna be different than how it is in America. That's just how it is. It's a new country. So just try to be respectful of people's culture. Three is water. Water in Paris, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit of an acquired taste. It tastes way different than water in America. So I don't know. I wasn't drinking a lot of water out there because I just couldn't with the taste of the water. Also, certain drinks, I don't think Paris puts a lot of like high fructose corn syrup in their drinks, or if any. So sometimes their drinks can taste a little different than ours. Like, I taste Sprite and it tastes like such a healthy Sprite. It wasn't bad, but it tastes like a healthy Sprite. Certain drinks that I ordered, for example, I had McDonald's and I ordered like a lemon lime soda. It tasted like detox water. It tasted like they put lemon and lime in water and let it sit to have the flavor, but it didn't taste it didn't taste like actual like soda. Two last things. So because I went in the summer, one thing to note is that in the summertime it doesn't get dark until about like 10:30, 11, which for me was just like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy, because here in New York it gets dark like 8. So in Paris, for it to get dark at like 10:30, 11, and the sun still rises about 5:30, I just felt tired all the time because my body was like, okay, is it nighttime yet? So that's something to keep in mind as well. And the last thing I would say is the fact that Paris really can be done in 3 to 4 days. I don't think you need more than 3 to 4 days being in Paris, depending on what you want to do. I feel like it's one of those things where, you know, you're kind of plan it out where you can do the touristy stuff, visit Eiffel Tower at night, because after a while it feels like there isn't much to do other than cafes, which a girl on TikTok said that's the point, but other than cafes and shopping and museums, there really isn't much to do. So I definitely feel like it can be done in 3 to 4 days, and then you can travel to somewhere else in Europe. Hey guys, this is my self-remembering. I should have added this in the video. Please, please, please be mindful of your surroundings. For me, I'm a New Yorker, so I feel like my sense of awareness and things are very heightened. But you want to make sure that your sense of awareness and your surroundings are heightened when you go to Paris. They talk a lot about pickpocketers and making sure that you know where all your belongings are at all times, especially in tourist areas. So places like the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, you want to make sure that you know where all your items are. I recommend bringing small bags, crossbodies that you can make sure you know, pull to the front of you. If you are a guy, please, please, please do not put your wallet in your back pocket or your phone in your pocket. These are things that you don't want stolen from you. This would make the trip very, very traumatic. So just be very, very mindful of your surroundings. I didn't have any issues while being there, but it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So again, you want to make sure that you're being very, very mindful. Okay, back to the video. This is the end of the travel guide. I hope this video was really helpful for you if you're traveling to Paris very soon, and I hope that you have a wonderful time on your trip. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on your post notification bell, as well as check out the Paris vlog if you haven't already. It is up and live on my channel. But until the next video, bye guys.